Good morning, everybody. Unicorns back, and today we're going to be going along part of what they call the National Cycle Route 7, which will also take us along the side of the River Leven. It goes all the way from here at Balloch to Glasgow, which is 21 miles away. But today we're just going to Dumbarton, and we have some very interesting features along the way for you. So let's go.
National Cycle Route 7. I said National Cycle Route 7 with a sh instead of a s. Well, we've figured out the secret of why we can't find 7 bicycles. We've had a eureka and we've realised that since this is National Cycle Route 7, that's probably why it's marked with a red 7. Meaning that there's not 7 bicycles, it's National Cycle Route 7. Guess that's why we can't find them.
So this cycle route was actually walked by many as well. It's used by quite a few dog walkers. What else is it? Used to be a towpath.
Used to be a towpath, yeah. That's where you've got, well, a towpath, but it was also obviously used for transporting stuff.
This part of the cycle route runs along the River Leven. Now, we already showed you a wee bit of the mouth of the Leven when we did our Balloch Country Park Part 2. What else is it used for? Unicorn?
It's been a towpath for many, many decades. There were lots of industrial factories and such like, as we will go on to tell you, in the area. So this was used before the advent of the railways for bringing stuff backwards and forwards.
Centuries is more accurate.
The river, the towpath, were used to bring the goods to factories.
And what you're actually seeing there is boats, obviously, that are moored up at the jetty. There are quite a lot of private jetties up here. And look at that one, Miss Money Pit. Take it, they spend a lot of money in it and it sucks the money out of their wallet.
Maybe it's not fuel efficient.
We chicken. Something we see on the boatyard over the other side.
Used to be the Loch Lomond Radium Works.
Loch Lomond Radium Works. So that was probably connected to something else that we'll see further down, which I won't mention at the moment.
And then when it sort of like dissipated, the boatyard took over.
Right. Interesting.
Do you think all of the little child labourers ate raw radium when they worked in there?
Well, it was more for the medicinal purposes and dyeing purposes, as we're going to talk about. So I don't think it was terribly bad.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we're talking Scotland in the 18th and 19th century here. Of course there was child labour.
Oh, well, yeah. It was, the payment was a kind of barter system back then, so they worked and they got what they needed.
Unless they were forced to work.
I don't know much about the employment status of the children and things like that.
If you were 9 years old and physically fit, they would probably have you in some kind of job.
I can only imagine what you fed them and what you didn't feed them. Slice of bread and a bowl of gruel. Don't want to discuss that, really.
It's history.
Yeah, it's history. It was a bit cruel, I suppose, but...
Thing is, those children back then were tough as nails, so it was a bit different.
Yeah.
As we pass this bit of the towpath, on my left, your right, there's 2 buildings, one being the local angling club dating from 1973 and further along being the rowing club from 1827. It's smaller, it still gets used and it's produced several national champions in Scotland in rowing, I would assume, so there you go.
And it's used by runners, as you can see.
Yeah, the cycle path.
Somebody else coming over the way. So, if you're moving into the area, there's the angling club.
If you enjoy fishing.
Enjoy fishing. As far as I know, you might be able to get a boat from the angling club as well to hire.
Another thing while we're walking is in 1827, that means that the rowing club is currently the oldest functioning and still standing rowing club in Scotland, I'm pretty sure.
It's the oldest rowing club, is it?
Aye. That's
The
right, yeah.
oldest one.
Strictly members only, it says on the door. Something tells me that that building is not the original one. Surely they've refurbished and rebuilt that at least once or twice since it was founded.
Nope.
That is not 1827 architecture, no way. They would use sandstone or brick or something. That's like stereotypical council scheme architecture.
And they might just put a facade on it and plastered over the top of it with broadcast.
I suppose, but it's a bit square.
And here, as you've probably seen walking up to it, we've got Unicorn.
This is the Loch Lomond Water Scheme barrage. This is the other side of the barrage that was officially opened in 1971. Before that, there was nothing on this river. It was used to discharge the water, as I had already said, to alter the levels of the loch and the Leven.
Do you fancy a metal bin?
No. Clyde Loch Lomond Path.
I didn't know that was there.
National Cycle Network, West Central Scotland.
That's funny considering we've been over here only a few million of times.
The Lade?
What lade? It's not a lade anymore. Calling it water would be too generous.
Do you smell garlic?
It's like I could smell wild garlic or something. Oh look, a dog.
They're ruthless.
I don't know if that was a lab or a golden retriever.
There's a white retriever.
Wonder if those exist. Said I wonder if those exist. Right, well, we've come to a bridge here that we call the Stucky Bridge. For whatever reason we call it the Stucky Bridge. I don't know why we call it the Stucky Bridge. The Bear and the Unicorn don't know why we call it the Stucky Bridge, but that's what it's always been, and that's probably what it always will be. You can see there's water rings right there. Well, life rings, I suppose you can call them, not water rings. And they're there because there has been plenty of instances of people accidentally falling into the Leven. Not necessarily off the bridge, but it has happened before. And there's also a staircase on this path that takes you up and onto the bridge if you need to get into Jamestown over there. CCTV in operation on the bridge apparently.
Here comes the Unicorn looking very pensive.
Pensive because the Stucky Bridge is notoriously dodgy.
Well, it was considered very dodgy.
It still is considered very dodgy.
Without me saying too much, people, I'll give you 3 guesses what's about to happen here.
A seat.
Unicorn
Nice
just
yellow
used
one.
2 of our guesses.
That's a lovely colour, isn't it? A bit
Yes,
different from
nice
your
and nice bright.
standard
Nice bright yellow.
wooden bench.
For almost 250 years, this river was one of the world's leading producers of bleached, dyed and printed cloth, mainly because the people that manufactured the stuff in Glasgow, the rivers and whatnot were so polluted that they wanted to find an area that had fresh, fast water, and the River Leven and the Loch were the perfect example. So they moved a lot of their factories down here. A lot of them started off as bleaching fields, and then they became printworks and also dyeing factories. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that a wee bit further along here. From the early 18th century and for about 40 years after that, this area was the leading producer of bleached, dyed and printed cloth.
Everyone about here must have been goth then because of all the bleach. It was in pure white.
No, actually, it was done with cow dung and urine.
Unicorn never got that joke.
I know, bleach white, yeah, haha. But it was actually done with cow dung and urine.
That's lovely.
And I want to point the cloth would get woven in other mills and arrive
Okay.
here in an unwashed and unbleached state, which is why they had to have the bleaching fields. So there you go.
Every now and again, you'll come across steps like these when you're going along the path, and from what I can imagine, they were probably from a far, far, far gone era when boats used to frequently travel up and down the Leven. And I can also imagine that they still get used now by fishermen, for example, using waders going into Leven to fish, or just using them as a vantage point to stand on to cast their hooks. As you walk along this path, you can also smell the distinct smell of alcopops in the brewing. I don't mean alcopops. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
It's because there's a brewery just like literally over the wall.
Every now and again, you'll get specifically named fishing areas. This one's 33, and it's double pipes.
Who's the poor angler that has to come out and name all the fishing spots?
Who knows? I find it very calming walking along the side of the river.
Although it is very rare to see someone under the age of 20.
And it looks like somebody's decided to just chuck a couple of water rings in. So if you're listening, I think that's quite sad because it could cost somebody their lives.
They're probably left over from the incidents of that happening not long ago, being chucked off the bridge.
Pertinent to your point there about costing someone their life, this river might not look like much at the very moment, but it's the second fastest flowing river in Scotland. So that is a lot of current that you can cut up in.
Yes,
So
although-
just be careful, people.
The unicorn unfortunately knows someone that was taken by the river.
Okay, here's for a chorus of row.
Let the barrow.
Right behind me.
Barrels of whiskey.
I think that's probably what they are, yeah.
Yeah, but they'll be
Unless
empty,
they're
unfortunately.
Unfortunately. You can tell you're in Scotland when they're using razor wire instead of barbed wire to protect a brewery's upper and outer walls. After all, it takes very, very desperate measures to keep an angry Scotsman away from his or her favourite beverage, shall we say.
Behind me, you can see a channel which is heading up that looks into the other side of the trees. And as I previously mentioned, there were several printworks established in this area which would then channel in water and all the rest of it from the river that would go directly into the works so that they could use it in their bleaching and their dyeing processes. And there was one further little back that we never showed you either that was called the Lake, which also went into one of the printworks, which I cannot actually remember the name of at the moment. But
Yeah, and that was on this side.
another interesting point about this spot, if you're very lucky and you're here in the summer or whatever, you might actually see a heron perched over there. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah,
See one today. We'll need to watch this. Aren't they lovely?
there's a quote here from presumably one of the workers before they died, which I can imagine would have been taken a long, long time ago before these were put here, since it was a long time ago, and it says, the directors were respected back then. Everyone curtsied and bowed, and if anybody was anything other than working class, they were something. We saw the directors now and again in the department, and someone would pat the top of their head, meaning someone was coming around wearing a hat. So that was the signal to look busy as if you were doing work. Looks like there was two owners of the company, one being Alexander Wiley and the other being John Christie. If you look across the river there, you can see a heron. And this is exactly what we're talking about. Along this river you can see herons from time to time, chilling, doing their thing. The thing is, they're very shy, so when you encounter them you have to be slow and quiet because they're very, very jumpy. I think that one's probably caught on to the fact that we've noticed it, since it's making very, very slow movements. Might be trying to wait for an opening to get away. Get an interesting pattern on it. Might be difficult to see, but it's kind of grey with black control feathers, it looks like. That's what you call them. I can't quite remember, I'm not up to date on my avian biology, but they're an interesting creature.
Look, the blue bench, but guess what? I'm not going to sit at it.
That bench is a good spot once you've been to the shop to sit down and eat whatever goodies you've bought.
For reference, there's a shop just up there and along a bit. It's not too far away.
It's literally up and to the left and then you're there.
Yep. They're going quick, there's a bear coming.
Wonder what they're eating at. Does anyone remember Loch Katrine, where we spoke of where the water for these comes from? If you don't, you should go back and watch the Loch Katrine videos and you'll know the full story.
There's a little cameo shot of the Craftsman Gay printworks as well.
As well?
Yeah, then shot a long time ago.
Suppose. Would anyone like an empty can of Stella Artois?
Thank you. I don't really know. I suppose I prefer Cronenberg.
Right.
This is the bridge coming into view now, is the Bonhill Bridge. Well, that is actually the second iteration of the Bonhill Bridge. But yes.
I don't remember the first iteration, I wasn't alive.
No, you weren't.
Were you alive?
I was, yes indeed. In this general area across to my right hand side, there used to be a big massive building that would store the cotton and the flax and all the rest of it for the print works, and it was called the Leaf and Field Works. And also further up on this side of the bridge there was one called the Ferryfield Works, which the Yak may be able to tell you what it's used as now.
There is a nursery there now, which is funny because I actually used to go to that particular nursery, so there you go. And by the way, for any of you that aren't from the UK or some other country that uses that word, a nursery is a kindergarten.
We have a wee repair station here. Unfortunately, it looks as if the pump's broken. Right, and round this side, there's a lovely wee diagram on how to repair a puncture and some tools that you might need to do it. On the other side of the bridge, there's only trees and sort of like grassland and various whatnot there now. But at one time, a good few years, decades actually, there used to be a whole lot of shops across there. There was a Little Doston's Mini Market. There was a fantastic chip shop because I used to go to it. I don't know if any of you as kind of old timers might remember Derek Parlane. His wife had a wheel shop there. There was a pub called The Grapes. There was, I'm sure it was a wee cake shop, baker type thing, and there was another pub at the end. So it was always very kind of busy around about that time. But yes, that was all there then.
There is a stadium behind me there owned by the Vale of Leven Football and Athletics Club. It's used obviously for football and athletics, that's pretty self-explanatory. There is a nice wee guard dog over at one of the gates over there. Sweet wee thing, wee brown dog. Doesn't seem like a very good guard dog, but I suppose it wouldn't be there if it wasn't good at its job.
And there's the grounds of the cricket club in there. How's that?
Hi, how's that? Do you reckon he's having a wee?
Aye.
This here behind me is the remains of the Dillichip Bridge, which was on the other side of that would have been the Dillichip Printing Works, which was one of the 4 or 5 in the area that we have already mentioned. And probably maybe 30 years ago now that this bridge was demolished, if not longer.
We've come to the other side and we found this little path that's slightly less overgrown and more traversable, so we're going to go in here and you can see more of what's left of this bridge. Looks as if there's some remains of a support and obviously the main structure of the bridge itself. So hopefully when we come in here you can see a bit better what we were talking about. So there you go, that's presumably the original support.
So we've just made a wee wander up that hill there, and we've come up to this point here.
Which is actually the path that led over the bridge. There's a sign there that says bridge closed, pedestrians use Bonhill Bridge, which we showed you is over there. So once this bridge was closed, people had to use the Bonhill Bridge.
We have no idea exactly how long it's been closed for, but we do reckon it's maybe 30 to 40 years ago it was closed off.
That's Bear's estimate. The unicorn might know, since she used to use it a lot.
We don't want to go any further here because we'll fall off the edge.
There is no bridge left.
On top of the unicorn.
Old style lamppost, obviously. You might be able to see there's actually the curb is still there from the pavement. It's still in the shape of a pavement. It's a pretty good example of what nature can do to man-made structures. It can completely hide everything. You would never know. And obviously the path from the bridge used to go along there, but there's another path down there as well.
So the path would have continued along there, round to the right, and all the way down. All the way down there. So we try and get back out of the other side, Jack.
Absolutely. Might as well have a laugh.
Right, let's go then.
Looks pretty doable.
Doable.
Yeah, quite overgrown, but yep, doable. This has been here for a long time. Maybe just with all the thorns. The inevitable dangers of going overgrown places. Ah,
And look what we've got here, unicorn sitting on the chair.
unicorn on a chair. But there you go, a freaky reminder of the inevitable and unstoppable march of time.
Walking, we're further along the towpath now, and I reckon that, I'm not exactly sure where it was, but I reckon that this must have been maybe a site of the previous printworks. It's been repurposed, I imagine, as what's there now, which is is it a distillery type thing?
Bonded warehouse.
Bonded warehouse. Can you get that out there? And behind me you can see a channel in the water, and there would have been boats coming up here before the advent of the railway. All the stuff was transported by scrows, which were like tiny little boats, and they would come up here and they would have like these islands, and they would also have like small jetties for them to offload their stuff for the printing works. And I think that behind me is probably one of the ones that were used for the delicate one that was here. Right, we're going to end today's video here. And behind me is what was affectionately known as Heron Loop on the river. And just slightly up that way, there's a lovely wee Chinese garden that you can go and sit in. So that's all from me today. So happy rainbows from Unicorn, and we'll see you shortly in part 2.